Hi there, I'm Karen Field Bolek, and this is a review of the first half of my course, A Spiritual Path to True Love. Segment 1, Love and Love's Opposites, consists of an introduction and 9 lessons. In the introduction, I talked about how I came to be a spiritual teacher, qualities for success in money and in love, the spiritual path of love that I teach, the end goal of following a spiritual path, and what the law of attraction does and doesn't do and why. Lesson number 1 is love given versus love received. You learned that where love is the elephant, most of us are blind men, thinking we know more about it than we really do. You learned that people love in their own ways, all of us imperfectly, and that there are practical ways to expand your awareness of what love is. Lesson number 2 is defining love and love's opposites. You learn that love is the natural human reaction to profound goodness perceived. That the polar opposite is hate, the existential opposite is indifference, that a partial spiritual opposite is fearfulness, and you saw that love's opposites are defined by a lack of goodness or badness perceived. Lesson number 3 is other spiritual opposites of love. You learn that spirit is an obvious, common human experience. That a complete spiritual opposite of love is cynicism about love itself, or about human nature. And that another partial spiritual opposite of love is prolonged grief. Lesson number 4 is types of love and shadow opposites. You learn that the ancient Greeks defined at least 8 types of love, that romance has both a masculine side and a feminine side, and is actually a motivator for both men and women. You learn that there are other types of love identified by various sources, and that shadow opposites are deficits in complete love that affect the happiness of partners. Lesson number 5 is elements and expressions of love. You learn that expressions of love are mostly either words or actions. You learn that there are many elements of love, with some with multiple meanings. That cultures create collective ideas about what love is and how it feels, and thereby set expectations for their culture. That dating coaches can help us understand more about how the opposite sex thinks and about love and dating. You learn that the absence of elements or an expression of love also creates shadow opposites, and that the most essential element without which it isn't really love is caring. Lesson number 6 is dynamic opposites, compassion versus passionate attraction. You learn the following. Dynamic opposites are another name for dialectical opposites. Both compassion and passion are essential in true love, but they move partners in opposite directions. Negotiation is a critical skill in love relationships, but it's not the same as love. When negotiating is perceived to be unfair, it feels unloving, and the lack of fair play becomes a shadow opposite. An excess of compassion or passion yields predictable relationship problems. The excitement of passion in a relationship has parallels with the excitement of watching a professional team sports game. And the benefits of dialectical activity described by philosophers Hegel and Marx hold true in relationships. Lesson number 7 is complementary opposites. You learn that complementary opposites are like yin and yang, the kind of opposites that attract, where individual strengths and weaknesses are dovetail with each other. They can be used as inspiration to grow, or as an excuse to avoid growth, or a way to take unfair advantage. And this fact touches a deep nerve in society about the roles of men and women and gender equality, along with ideas of what it means to be a man or a woman. Lesson number 8 is control opposites. You learn that control opposites are choices people use to push love away. This is framed as reason versus passion, head versus heart, or love versus will. Lesson number 9 is complex control opposites. You learn the following. Marriage, or any negotiated, structured relationship, is a complex controlling force that can either support or oppose love. Adjusting a stifling relationship structure to return to love is complicated. Extreme selfishness is an internal force that opposes love and the expression of love with any degree of warmth. Extreme selfishness is both a control opposite because extremely selfish people work to control and manipulate everyone around them, and a spiritual opposite of love because selfishness represents the spirit of egotism and separation from the rest of humanity, in contrast to the spirit of unity and love of humanity. Finally, although everyone is selfish sometimes, a continuous cycle of acting loving and then selfish may stem from a cycle of shame and rage, as detailed by author Dr. Michael Lewis. Such a person's love is experienced by loved ones as complex at best and abusive at worst. Segment 2, Love, Attraction, Growth, and Spirit, contains 9 lessons, lessons number 10 through 18. Lesson number 10 is proper distancing and critical points of growth. You learn the following. Proper distancing means keeping the amount of space between yourself and each person in your life such that you're best able to love each of them in appropriate ways. Couples should determine their own proper distances, but some partners have different needs for closeness, creating major relationship stress. Proper distancing is connected with critical points of growth. A critical point of growth is a growth step you have to take. You have to accomplish in order to reach your own self-determined goals. Romantic partners occasionally push each other's buttons, which means they touch off each other's critical points of growth. If the partner who gets triggered is open to growing from the painful experience and figures out how, love can grow stronger. Lesson number 11 is growth and attractiveness. There you learned about personal growth and spiritual growth, as well as 2 types of personal growth, expansive growth and corrective growth. And you learned that growing helps you become more attractive from the inside. Lesson number 12 is growing more attractive. You learned of several qualities related to personal growth that generally make people more attractive from the inside, especially to other growth-oriented people. Lesson number 13 is the nature of attractiveness versus attraction. You learned that in the ethics of aesthetics, different physical aesthetics carry moral overtones for some. But spiritually, aesthetics are just personal choices, which should always be respected. The attitudes held about people's choices can be loving or unloving. In attracting true love, fashions are fine, whatever you may choose, but regardless of your aesthetic choices, it's most effective to dress and act like you. And understanding attractions of deprivation and attractions of inspiration, which we learn from author Ken Page, can help you move toward those who are capable of truly loving you and away from those who are not. Lesson number 14 is emotional demons. There you learned that emotional demons such as feeling inadequate or unattractive can drag down relationships. Jealousy and compersion are 2 different ways to view your partner's relationships with others. Someone who truly loves you will love you despite your demons, but they might eventually feel like a babysitter until you outgrow the demons within you. And paradoxically, as we learned from author Esther Perel, making love allows for a healthy way to express feelings like neediness, desperation, and possessiveness, which are totally inappropriate in any other context. Lesson number 15 is clean slate forgiveness. There you learn that after being seriously wounded in love, forgiving the person who did you wrong expands your own capacity to love others, generally. And you learned 3 distinct approaches for forgiving others. Lesson number 16 is emotional clean slate. You learned that after you accept a serious loss in love and work through forgiveness, there are techniques to clear away your residual negative emotions. Ground rules and suggestions for emotional clearing are offered. And you learn that some misguided ways of trying to clear out bad residual feelings absolutely exhaust the people around you and just don't work. Lesson number 17 is the power of true love. This lesson asks, can you make love happen? Or is falling in love ultimately a force of nature, like a gift from heaven? I argue for the latter. Also, you're asked to consider the broad spectrum of emotions related to love presented in popular songs, and to learn about the power of love from singers and songwriters. Lesson number 18 is finding your true love. You learned that love is the natural human reaction to profound goodness perceived, but when you find your true love, your perceptions of profound goodness are not only mutual, but also mutually accurate due to your soul depth of perception. The strength of your attraction to anyone signals your own growth potential at that time in that possible relationship. Various ideas are presented about the origins of our collective expectations of love and the origins of our collective ideas about how it feels to be loved. And last but not least, several definitions of soulmates are presented, along with a warning about the perfection trap. So next, let's look at 6 frequently asked questions that these lessons can answer. Number 1, what is love? Love is the natural human reaction to profound goodness perceived. Your love grows, diminishes, or dies in proportion to the change in the amount of goodness you perceive in your partner at any given time. Number 2, what is true love? In a way, true love is any honest and real love of any type, such as true friendship. But in the fullest sense of the term, the true love we all dream of, your perceptions of profound goodness in one another are essentially true and accurate, not illusory. All the types, elements, and expressions of love flow out of your perceptions of goodness in the one you love, resonating in harmony with your own goodness and bringing out more good qualities in you. Question number 3, how do you know if what you're feeling is real love? Your love begins with the soul connection and radiates usually quickly to all the other levels of your being. If you have an awareness of your soul, you'll realize it's love right away. But if you're like most people, you may have a vague sense that you feel amazing, but you don't know why, or you have a funny feeling that you can't pinpoint, or you saw something intriguing in the person's eyes, but you don't know what to make of it. You'll also feel inspired and curious about the person. Spiritually, you'll likely have shared values, want to live up to your highest potential around them, and be willing to grow when needed to keep the relationship going. Intellectually, you'll find them on your mind a lot, and memories of your conversations and time spent together and visual images of them will float back to you in idle moments. Your imagination is also stimulated by them. Socially, you'll find interesting things to talk about together, and in your estimation, you'll see them as better than others. Emotionally, highs and lows will occur, but generally you'll feel very positive about them and about yourself around them. When a clash occurs, you'll feel motivated to work through it so you can return to feelings of love based on remembering the good in one another. The relationship will simultaneously build your confidence and your partner's confidence. And physically, you'll feel very attracted, have chemistry, and want to be together, at least when you're not under too much stress. You might be aware of these different experiences all at once as love at first sight, or the thoughts and feelings may come to your awareness separately until at one point you can't shake them and have to admit to yourself that it must be love. How do I know it isn't just lust? Both love and lust can hit your awareness with a powerful physical and psychological attraction. Deciding to pursue a relationship involves seeing the chance of capturing the person's interest and sensing the risk of losing it. But in lust, your excitement falls off once you feel you've won them over. Your perception of goodness in them doesn't go past their body, their style, the challenge they present, and what they can do for you. When your love tries to travel upward through your emotions, mind, and soul, it doesn't perceive enough profound goodness to latch onto. What keeps passion alive? To keep passionate attraction alive, each partner's deepest and most personal needs have to appear possible to get and usually need to be met at least part of the time, so that partners' hopes remain stoked. Without the hope of fulfillment, passion turns to disappointment and frustration. When this happens too often, hurt and anger can result, which will begin to reduce the person's passion with that partner in the future. On the other hand, when passionate desires are always met, people begin to expect fulfillment in a routine way, like an entitlement. A sense of entitlement leads to passionate anger when desires are not met. Whereas positive passionate attraction comes when the partners recognize that their good fortune in being together is not an absolute right, but always a choice that must be respected. To keep passion alive, both partners have to be able to say no when it's for good reason, but also have to keep each other's hopes alive. When will I find, question number 6, when will I find true love? The short answer is as soon as you're ready and the timing is right. To be ready, grow and mature continually. Love yourself unconditionally. Open your heart and look for the good in others until you attract potential partners who are doing the same. Have patience and trust in the universal law of attraction to bring you together with the right person when the time is right. Focusing on your feelings of need or fear or despair depresses your spirit and keeps love at bay. And now let me tell you a little bit about the next segment of this course, Loving the World. When you're looking for true love, you might wonder why it's important to love the world. You may assume that once you find your true love, that's about all you really need to be happy. But let me remind you that tough situations in life have been known to tear couples apart. Our relationships in life are intermingled with our relationship with life. One day your partner, or anyone you deeply love, may run into a serious career or health or legal problem that changes their attitude toward life and may develop a problem with addiction or anger, cynicism, or depression. They may feel like they're living in a box and suddenly decide to break out at the expense of others. Knowing how to love the world, to see the greater good behind the bad, is a rare skill that will enable you to stay positive and perhaps inspire others when big things go wrong. To start understanding the world differently, we'll look at several self and world views. You'll get a broader understanding of yourself and others, and learn to switch from judging others by race, politics, religion, or whatever, to understanding and accepting people because you recognize and understand their self and worldview as human. Topics include ethical standards of goodness and the cosmologies that spawn them. Specifically, we'll take a look at the paradigm of good versus evil and compare it with alternatives that can free you up to appreciate people and cultures in new ways. And so, thank you for listening, and good luck in integrating this information into your life. I hope you'll join me again for the second half of this course, A Spiritual Path to True Love. Bye now.